Hi, and welcome back to VCTV. I'm Terence from LATOKEN, and you are now watching us from a few places. You can watch us from our main page itself. So that's LATOKEN/VCTV. You can also get us on YouTube. So remember, if you're watching us from anywhere and anywhere, please just click like, subscribe, and look into our schedules for the week and the month as well, because there could be some topics that you might like and you might take interest in. Today on our panel, we have the three gentlemen that you see here, and I'm going to quickly let them introduce themselves. Lawrence, let's start with you. Tell us a bit about yourself, and let's see. Yeah.
Hi, Terence. Thanks for having me. My name is Lawrence. I'm one of the founding partners of Blockwall, a Germany-based venture capital investor that is exclusively dedicated to blockchain investments. And as such, we have established a regulated fund structure. A couple of years back, launched a first closed fund that exclusively invested in token protocols. And we're about to launch a second fund with a first closing that exclusively invests in startups, so equity investments that have a strong blockchain component with their business model attached to it. On top of that, we've launched a couple of months back the Blockchain Research Institute Europe, an independent think tank that connects corporates to the matter in order to help them evaluate, get access, and further bring this technology forward. As such, we're a team of 8, and we're having a lot of fun doing what we do. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome back on VCTV. Jose, off to you next. Tell us a bit yourself.
So my name is Jose Grasa. I'm a serial entrepreneur, business angel, mentor, VC. I've been doing these roles now for quite a long time. And today I'm essentially focused on business inclusion. So any type of technology that can promote business inclusion to every individual on the globe. Obviously, that includes blockchain as well. Parts of it, and then obviously digital currency is also part of the game, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and neural networks. So it's quite broad in that essence, but it's also not very easy to generate a virtual social market economy by itself. So obviously you need a lot of building blocks to make that happen. So that's what I do. And I'm really excited about this topic today. It really is, the area that I love. Thank you.
Nice. Yes. Gary, over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure, Terence. My name's Gary Fowler, and I'm a Silicon Valley-based venture capitalist, entrepreneur. I've done 16 companies, had 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which is sold for $1.35 billion. And also Eva.ai, one of the top AI HR tech companies that I started a little over 4 years ago. So just love artificial intelligence and blockchain. And so we're looking for interesting entrepreneurs that want to go global. Obviously, AI and blockchain are interesting for us, quantum computing. Our specific focus is artificial intelligence. So it's great to be here. It's great to see old friends and new friends. Lawrence, it's great. So anyhow, we're excited today. I'm actually down in Palm Beach in Florida. During the pandemic, I've been riding out at my house near the beach here.
That's always a beautiful thing. Thank you, Gary. Yeah,
Sure.
So welcome everyone to the panel today. And as you know, we are talking about, I think it's quite a heavy topic on my end at least. So we're talking about blockchain, cryptocurrency, and the fiat money trade itself. So I think before we start the whole session, it's kind of good to kind of start it off with a little bit of definition towards what is cryptocurrency, what is blockchain, and what is consisting in that whole ecosystem. Because people talk about centralization, people talk about decentralization, but the question here is, are we finally at a point where we understand and trust cryptocurrency? So perhaps we can start with that one. Lawrence, can you take us through on your thoughts on what you think at the moment.
Yeah, I love that question, by the way, because so much has happened already. I remember a couple of years back when we were working with the OECD on helping regulators and central bankers get their hands on this topic. And back then, like the biggest issue really was like, what is a token? What is a cryptocurrency? I mean, this was the whole topic back then. And if you look at today, how it's evolved, I mean, you have tokens like Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're being treated as commodities. Then you have stable coins or crypto dollars, as some call them, like dollar-backed currencies that are digitally fungible. You have non-fungible. I mean, the list is still endless. What I'm trying to get to is what the media calls cryptocurrency is a lot of different things. And I mean, the three main buckets are protocol tokens, I mean, digital infrastructure that has a certain use. Then you have retail things like stable coins that are actually fungible in an everyday world. And then you have all the other things that it's exciting, experimental, and fairly new. So in terms of this discussion, I think it would make most sense to separate like infrastructural tokens from dollar-backed tokens, and then everything else, because everything else ties into it. Even Bitcoin ties into one of them. So I think this is the most reasonable distinction to make: protocol and fiat token.
Right. That's a great way to start things, Lawrence, and thank you for that definition as well. Jose, what's your say in this? Are we finally at the point where we understand the whole ecosystem?
You know, I've been getting a lot of connections and people asking me that they always like the way I clearly talk about things in a more practical way. And this is one of them again. So the problem is like this. I think blockchain is very nice. It's not something new. Okay, I remember that, for example, in Portugal, they introduced blockchain into the invoicing system in 2010. So quite a long time ago, but nobody talks about it. And so all the invoices get a hatch, okay, and they are unique, right? And it's implemented for the whole country. So the previous predecessor of blockchain was soft protocol, right? So so that's one thing, or one part of the essence. The other one is that when it started, okay. It was more like this is the way I look at it from a practical point. It was more like a product for people who are techie. Most of the individuals, they don't understand the token, right? It's very hard to handle it, and that's why you have these. I remember a bank, which is a bank in Switzerland. They came up with a hard wallet, right? Like a digital wallet that you could have in a hardware. So people have been trying to develop a lot of things to store these tokens, because in essence, a lot of people would lose those tokens, and once you lose the main token, there's no way you can get it back, so you lose your money. And on the other hand, we have also seen that there are a lot of problems, which also happens with traditional money, that the criminal world has been stepping in either to make some hostages and take those tokens or whatever it is, right? So the way I see it is more practical, and practical essence is like this. I think it has a purpose. I think we're going into a very good direction. I definitely don't think this is the last point. I think this is a starting point, definitely. And I strongly believe in digital currencies, in which format they are, either if they represent fiat money or anything else. And I strongly believe that governments, more or less, will step into this, and regulation will step into this as well. It's just a question of time. So far, the crypto world, percentage-wise, on the whole economy, global economy, which is more or less like $87 trillion a year, it's still a very tiny piece of the pie. So they have not been bothering themselves a lot with it. But it will happen, if it takes a majority position, definitely with one decree, just one decree, you make it illegal, and they step in. And I strongly believe that the next digital currency will come. We will see if we will be permitted to launch private digital currencies, because so far what we have seen, yes, there is a lot of private keys, etc. But in essence, governments will step in, and we will see if they will accept, and who organizations will be able to issue, right? Those digital currencies. That's another story, because now you have like thousands of these crypto coins, and in essence, the liquidity, I would say maximum the top 5, right? And obviously, Ethereum and Bitcoin is part of the game. Now, still, I think the idea of Bitcoin, in essence, was to democratize and decentralize, okay, the whole setup. But that's not what we are seeing. Everybody knows that a lot of whales control today Bitcoin, right?
Yes.
And we can discuss if it's done artificially or not, right? But what you see is those speculative fluctuations. Now, I've been studying the reason for money, because it has to do with the project that I'm involved in today, which is BizMoney. So we intend to have a digital currency inside, not a token. Okay, it's something new. And we have been looking at the reason for money. And the reason for money is basically like this. In essence, is 2 objectives. One is that we need an escrow, okay, to buy something or to exchange different things, right? And that escrow basically gives you a valuation to something, or let's call it an asset A, right? That eventually you're going to sell to somebody on the other side, which accepts that asset, is valued for that number. Doesn't matter what it is. You can call it dollars, euros, Bitcoin, doesn't matter. Okay? It's just an escrow temporarily exchange, right? And the other thing is, because this happens, and this escrow, you don't execute immediately, it can take some time before the money gets out again, right? If you sell something. So means that you want to store money for the future. Now, the traditional citizen, what it wants, in essence, is store money for the future. That they can take that money, whatever type of environment it is, and they can buy something they use for the future. And that's what they want. So the speculation around it, right, is you can look at it as positive and negative. Positive for those who make the money, very negative for those who lose a lot of money, because at the end, if it's economy or if it's Bitcoin, there is one volume, right? And it's leveraging from one hand or from one person to the other person. And this is, the principle of economy. Somebody is more smarter than the other one. So what ordinary citizens want is that it's stable. They love to be gaining speculation, but they don't like to lose it, right? And there is no way you can go both hand in hand. So in essence, at the end, a few will gain a lot, and a lot of people will lose a lot. And everybody talks about only the positive side of Bitcoin, but I can tell you one thing. There is also a negative side on it. And the negative side is, a huge amount of people that have really lost a lot of money because they don't understand how it works and they don't know how to trade. So, and I always develop things for the masses. Okay, my concern is always delivering something that is good for society and less for the niche. And this is the way I look at it. So to round it up, definitely digital currency. Okay, something new will come up. I cannot tell you what it is because, maybe I don't know. And definitely blockchain, and can even be a new version of blockchain.
Right. Thank you for that, Jose. Good opener there. Gary, over to you. What do you think? The speculation and volatility of the crypto market itself. I mean, we've seen gold prices go up and down. We've seen stock prices go up and down. And do you think humans in general like this volatility? And are we all ready to understand and trust cryptocurrency?
If you're a day trader, I think they love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the swings are where people make money. the challenge, so there are a lot of different challenges. I just sent over an article I wrote on quantum computing, and I actually have another one coming out in Forbes probably this week on cybersecurity and quantum computing. But the challenge that we have, so let's look at where we are today. First of all, you have fiat currencies. The US dollar is, one of the top currencies, if not the number one currency today. And yet it's, what's it really based on? It's based on the strength of the belief that it's, not gold as a reserve, right? Richard Nixon had taken that part away, but the strength in the US. The challenge that you have, and I wrote another article in Forbes called Nikola Tesla's Dream Comes True, the democratization of opportunity. The challenge that you have, it's great that we're spreading this out. It's great that it gives people another way to be able to trade. It makes things a lot easier for sure. I mean, you can send money virtually anywhere at any time. But then there's challenges that come along with it too. So if I'm sending the money and I'm not using a bank and I don't need to have another third party involved, it's incumbent upon me to take all the risk, right? I don't have Visa or MasterCard. If somebody tries to screw me out of money, I don't have any recourse, right? I may not even know where that person is. So there's some issues that come along on top of it. The other thing is hacking. So
Right.
my concern is about, being hacked. I mean, and in the cryptocurrency side, your digital wallet. I mean, I actually had my identity stolen. So I had people go in and use my driver's license, social security number, all kinds of different things, and stole my identity, tried opening up things. I can't even imagine if they would have gotten into my digital wallet, right? If by some chance. The other thing is, I just had a friend of mine that said he had bought 1,000 Bitcoins early on. And those Bitcoins, maybe that was you, Jose, actually. Were you the one that had them on your computer? So
Yes,
somebody
yeah.
had them on their computer and their computer was damaged and they could never retrieve their coins. 1,000 coins.
Ouch. Ouch. That's a big
So
ouch.
I bought them at cents, not on dollars, right? And they
Yeah.
lost them. So those kind of things, and what happens if somebody dies, right? And they don't,
Right.
simple kind of things. I mean,
Yeah.
they die and you can't get in their digital wallet because you can't get into the computer. So there's a whole host of things. It's interesting. There's going to be some migration towards it for sure. But then again, you've got the politics that are going to try to hold it back. I was involved in a very, very, very large token sale that went south. And actually one of the rare deals that I've lost money on. So there are situations that, not everybody's willing to accept it right now. And then you got the criminal aspect of it too. I mean, it's easy to shift money, so anybody can shift it, right? The next thing is we want to talk about, so that's adoption and the hackability of it. The other thing is, as I've written about quantum computing. So can you imagine a system today that in 200 seconds can do what it take 10,000 years on a conventional computer to do? So the invincibility of the blockchain, it's gone. It will be obsolete the day that happens. It's happening now. Google, Microsoft, IBM, but it's getting better and better all the time. So now with qubits, we can do things that are unheard of. So everything's at risk, right? Once the hackers get those types of technologies, or, I think that what's going to happen is you're going to be able to buy time like the old days. You could buy time on a mainframe. You can buy time on a quantum computer. So there's issues that are going to come up. I mean, I can imagine there's a time where there are two quantum computers in the world facing off against each other all the time, right? Attack, defend, So there's some challenges and we better foresee everything and look at it in a holistic view of where technology really gone. I mean, quantum computers, they're going to fundamentally change every single part of our lives, right? We're going to live, as you know. I mean, the goal, I did a project at Stanford University with some Stanford University professors and my MBA students from the top business school in Russia. And I went out for a whole summer. And for 8 weeks, I worked on a project. It was called Living to 120. I mean, realistically living to 120. We're not that far away, even 150 now. So, but these technologies are going to assist us. And yeah, it's funny, Terrence, I was reading yesterday. For now, you can actually take, this is just a little off, but it's incredible how technology's changed. Using artificial intelligence, they're now able to clone your dog for $50,000. You can have your exact dog cloned. So if you love your dog, right, they'll clone your dog and you can have your dog again. Right.
Okay.
So,
that's a huge one on its own as well.
and and then you add artificial intelligence on top of it, right? You start putting AI in the mix, unsupervised AI. I mean, one of the systems that we've developed taught itself foreign languages. It taught itself Spanish and the first time in 1 hour. Then it went down through 187 different languages. It set it up. One part of the AI was a student, and one part was a teacher. And it went through Chinese, all kinds of Chinese dialects, 187 different languages. And so those kind of come, and my friend's house, my friend's a billionaire from Russia who lives in Silicon Valley, David Yang, and his house actually talks. It writes me notes. It has AI. It's the soul of his house. These kind of things are going to become commonplace. Now imagine taking quantum computing, AI, now forget the blockchain because it's going to be obsolete. How different is the world going to be, right, in a few years? Entirely different. So let's look at the future and take a very holistic view of it. And yes, we're going to go through some steps, 100%, because if I'm in a developing country like Africa and I want to do some transactions, crypto becomes highly important for me and interesting.
Right.
But in places like, Singapore, the US, Europe, China, I'm not sure that's going to entirely change. I don't think in the US it's going to change wholly anytime in the near term. So I got concerns about the security. That stuff with, the hackers are going to be using incredible technologies like quantum to be able to get into your wallets. I'm not sure I won't have, I will keep my, I remember one time, or actually 2 times, I had a dinner and I had a lunch with the co-founder of the internet. And I asked him, we were just joking around. I said, well, how do you keep the internet secure? His name's Vinton Cerf. He's a chief evangelist at Google today. He literally developed DARPANET, which is the internet. And he said, you got to keep it unplugged. Just keep it off. I like having cash. You know what I mean? I'd rather have if I got a stack of bills or stack gold, at least I know it exists, right?
Right.
If I can touch it, I like to smell it.
Correct. I mean, you're right. Then going back to that point as well, I mean, having cash is great, but is this then, I mean, just looking at the topic itself, is this then a diversification, you think, of investment or on how you manage your life? Or is this going to be mainstream in a few years coming? I mean, Lawrence, what's your thought on this one?
I mean, it always depends on the point of view you have. I mean, if you look at where we are today, like taking off all macroeconomic conditions that exist today, what is it that we can invest in? What is it that we can hold? We can hold cash, we can invest in equities, we can invest in something like Bitcoin, we can do more alternative investments, PE, venture capital. I mean, I would even say Bitcoin is still part of venture capital, very much so, by the way. But I mean, at the end of the day, it really depends on what you want to have out of it. I mean, for a certain purpose, the co-inventor of the ARPANET would hold cash because it fits his beliefs. A person in developing country has different needs and beliefs, and in our Western world, we have other beliefs. So what I would answer to this question is, since I'm biased when it comes to blockchain, there's so much happening today with respect to AI, quantum computing, and blockchain. I would rather argue, and this is what I'm convicted of, that there's no one winner takes it all and one development takes it all, but it's a rather convergence. I mean, when it comes to blockchain, there's a very strong security aspect to it that lacks in terms of automation that you could find in AI. So what I see from the deals and developments we've seen and we're looking at, that they are integrating more and more with each other. So you'll see blockchain transactions secured by quantum computing, for example, that are enabling secure and reliable AI algorithms. So this is rather the perspective that I'm seeing when it comes to that part of technology. When it comes to what role does an asset have, like really, as I said, it depends on who are you and what's your perspective and your need today. And therefore you have a myriad of choices that you can pick from. It can be either one of them or a mixture of it.
Fair point. Thanks for that, Lawrence. Jose, over to you with this one. Is it diversification? Is it improving the traditional banking system? Or is it just a stamp of conviction? I mean, whoever is actually looking into blockchain or whoever is looking into cryptocurrency, what's your thoughts on this one, Jose?
I think you need to, first of all, understand human nature, because it doesn't matter what we want. I always tell my team, look, it doesn't matter what you think or what you want. It matters what your public wants, what they want. So if you understand what they want, then you're on the right track, right? And it's always about, in my case, right? It's always about what I say. It's we produce things for the standard deviation. There is no way you can produce anything for 100% of the population, because we are a universe by itself. Every individual is a universe by itself, different way of thinking, So you can have, let's say, lines which are common to the most, right? And that's what you need to figure out, those lines. Now, what I can tell you is that human nature is they want it simple, stupid, okay? And the simpler the better, and the more stupid, they don't want to, memorize a lot of stuff, and they want easy handling. The reason why paper and coin money and the credit card afterward became so popular is because it's just easy handling. They don't need to think about it, right? I cannot imagine that I need to think about, and this is the problem, and I have nothing against it. I understand the whole principle. We studied it in depth many years ago when it started. But I cannot think about anybody is going to memorize this token chain, because also you can have more than one token chain, okay? So, and even the transactions itself, even if you do it peer-to-peer, I have a lot of people that approach me and they say, well, I want to buy Bitcoin, or I want to sell Bitcoin, or this or that. But the problem is always they don't trust the system. They don't trust the other party. Nobody wants to move those coins first. They always want to, and it's always a struggle, So eventually, it's not that easy, as it sounds like. Yes, if you look at an exchange like LATOKEN, yes, it's easy because you guys own the tokens, right?
Yeah.
And you can move it from one account to the other, okay? And that's instant, no problem. The token doesn't move. Okay? It's a different thing if the token moves, right? So even. Let me put it like this. I was reading a few articles some weeks ago, and I think this is where it's more or less it will go to. So we now look, the machine learning chips, today we have machine learning chips, okay? And it's booming, right? And I even believe that we will come up to a point, because that's where it certainly will go to, that we may have like quantum chips. Right. Because we still don't know exactly. We know how to build the quantum computer. I'm strongly convinced that military services have a quantum computer for a long time already. Okay, because I've been reading this now since 2000. Let me think, 2002, 2001. Right, and there was already a lot of data available on this subject. I strongly believe it's in place, and getting it to commercial purpose, that's a different story. But once we get it into some kind of an environment that it's easy to handle and to replicate, okay, that's a different story. If you get it into a chip, then suddenly you could even put it in any smartphone, as an example. Now imagine the power that you would have with a a quantum smartphone, right?
Right.
If I look at blockchain, I think you need to look at blockchain like two things. One is that the token itself, and that can be obviously, it can be cracked, etc., etc. But if you link it in a way, right, and that it's a permanent record, then nobody can touch it. And the way I look at blockchain is like a physical notary, right? So in the past, you would have the notary, you would write it down on a piece of paper, it would go into the system. Today, all notaries, at least in some countries, they're all connected already. So they still use the paper for the record, but they put it in digital wise and everybody can access it. So the way I look at blockchain essentially is, yes, we can record. I don't say it's the blockchain that we have today. Okay? It could be another type of blockchain, definitely. But definitely something which is, the name blockchain says it by itself. It's connected to the previous record or the previous records, right?
Right.
So that you cannot change it afterwards. So the practical side, going back to the initial part of my speech, the practical side is, do citizens want it? That's the case.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we want, right? I've been talking this whole time, right? Just to come up to this finish, and they will decide what they want. And so far, what I see is that the applicability is there. The handling is not easy. Some countries, they have no option. I can understand that, and they will embrace it. But for the majority of the countries, we don't have any problem in shifting money from A to B.
True.
Right? So, and you can do it in different ways. I don't say it's cheap. That's another problem. It should be even zero, right? You should be able to. Now, what I can tell you is that inside BizMoney, we will come up with something very exciting, okay, in the next year, somewhere at the end of the next year. And I can tell you that, just as advance on it, you will be able to shift money from any country in the world in an instant.
There we go. Yeah.
And without cost.
Right. That's the kicker, even better.
Right. And I'll leave it
Can't wait for that one, Jose.
Yeah.
All right. To kind of ride on a little bit on your point as well, do the people want it, or do the whole fiat ecosystem want it? The PayPal, the banks, have they learned from historical performances of cryptocurrency? The good, the bad, the ecosystem. What do you think, Gary?
I mean, the thing is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the situation is, Jose's right on target with it. I mean, the situation today, the only time that I use crypto, if it's difficult, if I'm trying to transfer money, somebody's got to pay me, for instance. And it's very difficult because they're in a developing country. They're in Africa or, someplace like that where it's really hard for them. That is the way they transfer the money around, right? So then I do it. But, Jose is right on target with saying that, why would, from my standpoint, I use PayPal a lot. I use my banks a lot. And I just like having them, as I said, and Visa and MasterCard, American Express, having the responsibility, right? If somebody doesn't, if I'm sending something, here's where it gets interesting. If I'm sending something out, money, and I get a product or service, a car, right? And it's not what was agreed, what recourse do I have with a third party today, right? I don't know. And maybe I haven't done that with crypto, but I wouldn't do it, because if it's incumbent upon me, there's a great chance. I remember one time I ordered something off eBay. Actually, my wife is a doctor, and my ex-wife is a doctor, and we ordered medical books on eBay. And I got a cookbook that weighed the same amount as a medical book. It was an old, dusty old cookbook. And I took a picture of it. I sent to eBay and I got my money back. But I mean, and it was a couple $100 book, right? It was a physical book, but they wanted you to have that book. So what recourse would I have? And those are the kind of things that I would have concern. I use it a lot. you know, in terms of when something's not what they say. I got a bike recently, a $3,000 bike, and the bike was supposed to have this type of a Yamaha assisted motor on it. And instead of having the best one, it had the worst one. And in the literature, it said the best one. Well, I have recourse, right? Because I got Citibank and I have recourse. What recourse would I have? And that, I mean, that's like an insurance policy for me. And it takes some of the sting out of dealing online, right? What if somebody happens to steal your credit card? They do a skimmer on, you know, in a gas station, and they steal your information. Well, if I had a digital wallet and they cracked it, I'd be pretty pissed off because they have access to everything. At least I got a buffer from between me and the bad guys. So those are the kind of thing. And I think in terms of, you know, where we are, adoption, it's going to be once we solve some of these other kind of issues. What I think, quite frankly, is going to happen is you're going to have a lot of fiat currency transactions. And then on the fringes where it's really difficult to use fiat currency in those kind of states or those kind of places, that's where you're going to see mass adoption. And once they work out the kinks, it could come forward. But again, quantum computers sitting around the corner, right?
You're right. I think that's a good way to kind of put that as well. And just again, for those of you who are viewing in from wherever you are around, again, this is LATOKEN and this is VCTV. So VCTV in essence is a place where we get VCs to sit on a panel and talk about a particular topic or discuss a few things that are going on around the environment itself. Now you can get in. You can join us. You can pose your questions. Again, it's all in the links below. So do like, subscribe, and do all the necessary and get in touch with all of us. Just to kind of continue on with where we left, let's talk a little bit on the investments itself. Now, the investments that you're making, the investments that you're seeing, because the people now watching you, they are business owners, they are startups, they are those interested in the topics itself. So Lawrence, perhaps you can take us through this one. Talk to us about what you see happening and why the VCs are actually paying attention to the subject, the business and the startups in the ecosystem.
Yeah. So, I mean, also to split this into two worlds, from an investment into tokens, which we did with our first fund. Obviously, by investing in such, you're supporting those teams as well, like continuously developing that code to find its use case and adoption, which is very critical. On the other side, which is probably a bit more tangible, investing into startups that are building software that may have or may not have a blockchain component, it still begs the question, is this a business model that's better, superior by using blockchain as a technology compared to not using it? So that must be a clear yes in terms of an answer. But why it is interesting is, from our perspective, because blockchain offers sort of an upgrade to existing B2B infrastructures. So this is quite important to understand, because our conversations with corporates continuously reveal that they are looking into their own software setups and they find gaps when it comes to monetizing data. They find inefficiencies through and through. So they're actively looking at improving their status quo to continuously be competitive in the future. And in light of that, we see a lot of demand for blockchain-enabled software, because it just helps automate a lot of processes that exist today, but are burdensome, that are inefficient. And so there's, in other words, there's a strong corporate demand for better software solutions. And we see a lot of those being developed and already in play from our investment scope.
Nice. Thank you for that, Lawrence. Jose, over to you. When it comes to the VC's point of view, I mean, as someone wearing that VC hat that you rightly have on, why should businesses kind of pay attention to the topic, and why are you paying attention with regards to the ecosystem?
So one of the problems that we face and being practical is is more or less like this. 99% of the businesses that kick off today in the world, they are not about innovation. So it's just 1%. So typically VCs, right, they tend to look at it 1%. But we cannot forget that from that 1%, only 3% will ever be selected. Yeah. And it has to do, and I would like to explain this because I think the viewers that watch this, they need to understand how the ecosystem works.
Right.
So a lot of them, they are not well prepared. The only thing they see is getting those funds, but look at VCs not only getting those funds, look at them also as a add-on that can bring a lot of value to you, also strategic wise, right? Especially if you have a lead investor, you know, he can bring on board other investors as well. Okay, and in a lot of cases they also have a lot of know-how. You know, it's not that they don't have know-how, so they know exactly what they want. So you, if you are looking on the outlook for funds, first of all, you need to understand, does this private investor or this venture capitalist or the private equity, do you fit in their criteria? It's not if they fit in yours, it's if you fit in theirs, because they have the money and they will decide in whatever they want to invest in. Okay, so before you start losing your time and losing their time, first check out if this investor, you know, essentially fits, right, or that you fit in their investment criteria. If yes, then go ahead, study them, and you know, come up with an approach and explain them, you know, what they really are looking for, right? And then probably you're very close to getting into the pipeline to achieve the funds. If you don't do it like this, you know, there are cases, you know, that you get like 1,000 or 2,000 no's. It's not uncommon, right? And most people are not able to hold on that long. You know, some teams do, but a lot of teams don't, so they fall off. So in my case, I'm very clear. Look, I'm looking for solutions, technology that can enhance, you know, this money setup, which especially on the focus of business inclusion. It touches a lot of areas, okay, like social networking, marketplaces, banking, business process automation, messenger, okay, so all those areas. But in the background, we have artificial intelligence, machine learning, parts and blockchain, okay, digital currency. So if you have something that can make it happen, that we can have a better business inclusion for everybody on this planet, I'm all ears. And typically I look at the stage, which is pre-seed, because essentially I'm looking for talent. Okay. I give much more value to talented teams than I give to the project itself. And for pre-seed or eventually seed stage, you know, and I don't go further than seed stage. It's not in my interest to go into early stage or later stage. And the reason for that is because you have a lot of other alternatives on the market, okay, that come in that area. So it's not the right fit for me. Right. So please get in touch and tick on that button at LATOKEN, you know, if you think you are in this investment criteria and you love what we are doing, then, you know, we are very happy to talk to you.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Jose. That's a brilliant one as well. Gary, again, just coming to you, but again, not diluting the whole thing. You mentioned earlier about regulations catching up as well. Perhaps this is a question for you, Gary. How do you actually create regulations for something that wants to be a decentralized platform in a way? I mean, we look at things like that, or will it end up regulated eventually, you think? What's your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's already, I mean, when you start getting the large banks involved, they'll have to start. I mean, the idea behind the one investment that we made, I mean, they had problems with the regulators, right? So it's going to happen. You just got to get society to really, the politicians, society, the big banks, the institutions to be able to buy off on it. So it's going to happen. It's going to take, it'll take some time. So this is a journey, right? Here we are. I mean, in the US right now, we have record COVID levels, right? And we're in an entirely different society. So we, one thing about being able to go into a bank, you can't even go into a bank here right now. It's impossible, right? You have to do transactions through a drive-through. That we fundamentally shifted all banking, and if a vaccine comes out, it's great. If not, we got another 3 years of this stuff to ride through. So our society is going through a massive digital transformation right now. So all of us, here we are in Zoom, as I've said many times. I remember almost 5.5 years ago when I was one of the first users of Zoom, and Eric's the founder of Zooms. One of his VCs hooked me up with it. My friend said, "Oh, don't use it. It's not any good. Use Skype. Why would you use something that's unproven? I'm not gonna click in that link you sent to me. Why would I want to do it?" I said, "Because this stuff's really, really good." My partner and I started. My partner's got a PhD in AI for my Eva, and we started to use it. Now here we are, and I just checked. I actually wrote him a few weeks ago, and Eric, and I checked. I can't even believe he's worth $19 billion today.
There we go. He
right?
placed that bet right.
He placed it right. I mean, the thing is, but part of it is we're going through this digital transformation. So the point is, if you were to say over a year ago, where would we be today? A year ago, things are a lot different. We're willing to accept changes because we have no other way of doing business, right? And you can't travel. So even in Russia, when you buy a flat, you use cash, right? And literally cash. You have a suitcase of cash and you take it in. So I'm sure it's like that in other parts of the world too. So we've got to fundamentally shift. It's changed. I mean, people can't get out of their houses now. I just talked to somebody on LATOKEN a few weeks ago, and he said he hadn't been out of his house since March, literally out of his house. So things have changed. So we're more willing to accept the technology. The point is, I think that we're going to look at things like cryptocurrency a lot closer than we ever did before, because we now have to figure out how to be able to keep business moving forward. I'm hopeful and optimistic that we've moved in that direction. And again, quantum computers are going to put, quantum computers are the wild card here. And it's going to happen. It is happening. I remember, a long time ago, 1991, 92, I was on the web, right? I was on the internet, and I asked my engineer I couldn't figure out where all the websites are. So he made me a printout. I only had 1,000 websites, and he printed them out on paper, seriously. And I was fascinated by it. And here we are, fast forward later. I mean, everything's changed. So I'm hopeful. I mean, back then people didn't realize how powerful it was going to be. They didn't realize. Vinton Cerf, I asked him directly, the co-father of the internet. And he said, I didn't realize it was going to be as powerful as it is today. So I mean, I think that's where we are with a lot of these emerging technologies. And with cryptocurrency, obviously, this changes people's lives. If you're in a place like Africa and you have no other, I remember I was on one of the panels, and there were a couple of, actually, I was on a panel in Africa. I was judging startups, and that's how they do the business. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to transfer money around. You do it, peer to peer. It's very simple. So it's interesting. Interesting, challenging times, but the good thing, the resourcefulness of humanity, we adapt to the changes. I'm interested, by the way, in AI companies. Why? Because artificial intelligence, from my standpoint, is like a tidal wave coming in. It is the new electricity. This is the beginning of the 20th century. And think about the changes. Once Nikola Tesla, Faraday obviously was involved as a founder, but Nikola Tesla made the dream come true. Think about over the next 30 years, how in agriculture, manufacturing, the quality of lives, how everything, healthcare, how everything changed because of electricity and where we are today. Well, that boom is coming again, and AI is that new electricity.
Got it. Thanks for that one. You're right. I mean, some of the things that you mentioned there, those are definitely brewing industries. Telly, welcome to the panel, Telly. Thank you for joining us. No worries. Tele, we're talking about blockchain, cryptocurrency, and the whole fiat money trade. So within that ecosystem, Tele, perhaps I want to ask you this question in terms of kind of getting your preference in a way. Cash, Bitcoin, or stablecoin? What do you prefer and why?
That's a tough question. I guess it really depends on what part of the world you're in.
Yeah.
My preference is not cash, obviously. My preference would be possibly stablecoin. And the reason why stablecoin is uh, because stablecoin retains a particular value. For me, Bitcoin has really become a store of value. So it's almost like gold. It's To me, it's an investment product, not necessarily one that allows me to transfer value transfer just like that. Um, Cash is still king in many parts of the world because of the whole issue. It's easy, for adoption, but I could tell you, normally I just use my card for everything. Um, where I see the friction, I live in the Caribbean, as you know, so the friction for me is really in cross border. Even as simple as e-commerce. Unfortunately, we haven't really developed our payment rails or payment gateways as such. So, what you would call as saturated in North America, in Europe, and most of the developed world, in the developing world is still quite nascent and growing. So that's where I see huge opportunity in developing countries in the area of payment gateways that connect with different systems. And then when you're looking at the opportunities, and why I say stable coins as well, stable coins afford you that ability to, I guess, facilitate this whole cross-border region. At least for now, we are heading into a direction or a destination that I believe will be eventually maybe totally decentralized, right? But in the meantime, we still have to live between this centralized finance world and decentralized finance world. And so you need a bridge. And I see stable coins as facilitating that bridge. For
Right.
example, when you're looking at, let's take Africa, as a context, country like Nigeria has a stable coin now, at least one stable coin that's operational. And what I found is really interesting is they have improved their national payment infrastructure to the point where, just like America, you can facilitate interbank transfers like in seconds. Yeah, this is an amazing achievement for a developing country, right? And that's something other countries could take point. But then the next step is now that they've created a stable coin, within their ecosystem, they're now able to then transfer money locally. It stays locally, partner with liquidity providers, and leverage Bitcoin. So you're seeing that movement of leveraging Bitcoin and stablecoin in order to facilitate cross border. So this is now the new way of moving money along cross border, and pretty much it's like a seamless OTC type transaction that takes place on exchanges using that stable coin. So I see stable coins as really the bridge uh, until we get to that final destination. Now, the ticklish thing you mentioned before, where's regulation, and and is the space going to be regulated? You're already seeing central banks starting to create their own digital currencies, central bank issued currencies, in order to be part of that conversation. They don't want to be left out. And I think that's powerful in a way, because if you have then your existing fiat existing in a digital format, it then increases the speed of transactions, right? Because then you can switch from this digital currency into a stable coin, out in and out of Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that is a forward movement, and also it's a signal that the regulators also want to understand the landscape and learn in order to regulate it. I see regulation coming definitely. From a from an enabling perspective, but also in order to mitigate, obviously the dangers that we have in the space.
Right. Thank you
So-
for that. Yeah, you're right, Ellie. Thank you for that one as well. And I think just about kind of to sum things up, I mean, we have about 10 minutes left on the show. So let's try to sum it up for the businesses that are on board watching you at the moment. Do we have enough encouragement for them, you think, ladies and gentlemen? And how should we kind of, let's put it, kind of make them to adopt or encourage adoption? Perhaps, Lawrence, you can start with this one and kind of end it.
Sure. So, I mean, at the end of the day, encouragement comes from both motivational drivers. Either it's vision or it's need. So it really depends on what you're looking at. Do you see a market need that you're trying to fulfill? Or are you working on a vision where you might see that a market need may occur? Both aspects are very interesting. They require completely different sort of financing. If I had to put an example on each of them, the more tangible ones, the market need ones, are the ones that I described before, which are B2B solutions that require or do an improvement in terms of the technological infrastructure they have. And then on the more visionary note, I would account for anything around decentralized finance protocols that allow automated lending and yield things to take place for each and every one of us on a retail level. But this is from a technological point of view, still a few years ahead and quite experimental at this stage. Even though it works, it's still very crypto native and therefore quite visionary, I would say. So this is how I would describe the future, that there's an existence and a need for both. And as I said, it requires a different trade and a different approach in terms of venture capital financing. And we're in it for both because we believe in both of these futures. And I encourage everyone to think about it. And what we've seen so far is that quite some of the brightest minds I've come across are dealing with those two aspects. And that's also one thing that I enjoy very much, to be working with these founders to answer the question, what's pragmatic now, what's visionary for the future, and to be part of both. And I'm sorry, I have to jump off at this stage as well. I have something I cannot miss, unfortunately.
No worries. We're at the tail end
as
of
a
the
final
show.
sermon from my side, that's what I wanted to get across. And Tally, gentlemen, it's been my pleasure, and looking forward to speaking soon.
No worries. Thank you for that point, Lauren, and join us again on the next show.
Thank you.
Jose, off to you. Just your final words on the topic itself. Are we encouraging the businesses enough, or the people enough? Or are we looking at other ways of adoption here? I mean, what do you think?
On that point, I would like to say two things. One is that Lawrence said quite some interesting things, and what I can say is that what Lawrence is saying is not future telling. Okay, Lawrence was saying is exactly what we already have at this moment. So it's not something coming in the next 5-10 years. It's already here, and we strongly believe that this adoption will be massive. And the reason because we believe this is because it's an untapped area. Okay, remember that I'm always saying that this issue of business inclusion cannot be underestimated. Because on this planet, every 2 people and every 10, right, is touched by business inclusion. We are talking about 20% of global population, which is affected by this topic. And 99% of everybody who tries to kick off every year, right, basically doesn't fit into this business inclusion. What I mean is that they need to have a solution which has never come up in hundreds of years. Right? So this is a real big thing. And the only way you can make it happen is more or less with a description. You can even broaden it out that Lawrence made. So we feel that the topic, besides machine learning, artificial intelligence, and all the other things, including the quantum computing, but humanitarian topic. I'm not talking about the technology. I'm talking about the humanitarian topic that will affect people drastically. Is the topic business inclusion. Okay, it's not only about energy and food. It's also about how we make things happen. So you can produce food, but how are you going to bring it efficiently to the body, and how is going to this be paid up? Our systems that we have today, the way it works, the whole economy, is a very inefficient machine with a lot of speculation on the whole process, right? And although I wouldn't like to say it, the essence is we are paying a bill. Everybody's paying a bill. That could be much better. We could have a much better life if this machine would become much more efficient, right?
True.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
And we could also help those, who are willing to contribute. Remember, 45 million people give it a try every year. You know how many official incorporated companies we have in the world? 450 million.
That's a big number when you put it together.
Correct. So we are talking about a renovation of 10% a year. That people try to renovate the system. And of that 10% a year that try to renovate the system, only 0.5% of that 10% will survive 5 years. And only 25% of those 10% or 2.5% will ever survive the first year. Now, this is a huge impact. Okay. So I would leave it like that.
That's a very good one. I think for all the viewers out there, that's a good point to think about as well. Gary, what's your final thoughts on the subject? And do you agree with that?
I mean, the situation is, as I said, we are going through this massive digital transformation, and it's unprecedented. And in fact, McKinsey said a little over a year ago, 92% of the companies were thinking about going through a digital transformation over the next 10 years. And that literally has happened in 6 months after the pandemic because we had to do it. So I'm very hopeful that a lot of changes will take place in terms of crypto, blockchain, where we are. Of course, I mean, we're exploring all areas. Everything's open at this point. There's some challenges that we've got to address, regulation challenges, security challenges, et cetera. But I mean, this is the way humanity works. I've seen a lot of this in technology. I've been around the block a number of years. I worked in artificial intelligence stuff 30 years ago. So, I mean, I've seen it from Ops 5 and Lisp to where we are today. I've seen those changes, and I've been part of those changes. I've done 16 companies. So I'm hopeful. This is a great time. AI is the new electricity. Every single thing we talk about, Terrence, today has some type of AI component for the most part, because if not, you're not going to be able to process the data. Think about it, no matter what it is, even with blockchain, right? And to be able for the encryption, the capabilities, I mean, AI is going to have some type of involvement because we are inundated with information. The amount of data on the planet Earth increases at 61 to 62% every single year. How in the world are we going to be able to? So if I was a startup out there, I would look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning. I've written several articles about this, deep learning versus machine learning. And I mean, it was my most viewed article ever. And I didn't think that that would ever be the case. Why? Because people just don't understand it. And so we're just at the beginning of this, and it's a very, very interesting time. Startups, make sure going global is critically important for you. Regional dominance is critically important to make sure your product market fit, make sure that you've got the right team, but then you'd have to look in these trying times, how to be able to go global. Going global is the key. You've got to dominate a market if you want to get the VCs to invest in you. They want to have a company that's $1 billion opportunity, right? That's just what they want. So good, bad, or indifferent, like it or not. And if you look at behind those VCs, there's a lot of super high net worth individuals, pension funds, et cetera. They're the people that are doing investing.
Excellent. Thank you for that point, Gary. Very insightful indeed. Telly, Final words from yourself, Telly. Summarize it for us here.
Summarize it. Well, just to summarize it real quick,
Yeah.
based on what Jose and Gary have indicated, pretty much I can sum it into understanding that we need a new type of infrastructure layer that allows us to propel, allow us to innovate our business models that implement digital financial transformation. As Gary would have pointed out, it's not just about blockchain. It's a number of things. You need to have AI, blockchain, data, RegTech. You need to understand, even when you're going cross border to dominate, you have to understand the different laws in the different jurisdictions. You need to understand corporate structuring and a whole bunch of stuff. So it's a lot of learning. It's not relegated to one specific topic. So you have to be multi-sector and multidisciplinary in your approach. So this actually speaks to your team. Your team should be diverse, extremely sectoral, multilingual as well. Also helps when you're launching things. I'm fluent in Spanish and a number of other languages. It's important. It's important to source out all these things in order to complement, and then understand that as you start implementing your business models and you're looking at business model innovation, you should also look at trying to incorporate some embedded aspects in terms of your whole approach. So embedded finance is big. That is the future. That would also unlock a lot of value. And when it comes to raising, it's all about valuation. So I think
Thank,
it's for me that's important. And then you need to find out how to train and understand how all of these come together and become connected. So that's my takeaway.
thank you. Thank you, Telly. Thank you for summarizing it for us as well. And to those watching in again, this is VCTV by LATOKEN. I would like to thank the panel and ladies and gentlemen out there. Thank you. Bye-bye. And